To introduce you to, though it might at first appear like many books you've come across. You may, therefore, have some misunderstanding the story that awaits you. In fact, its conclusion is not yet. It is in that way without you. Chapter 1. Normal isn't what it used to be. This is a story nestled in a shallow valley is the town of far from the town square, across the river, past the neglected welcome sign, a young boy walks alone. His name is Luca Van Horn, and like you, dear reader, he's here for a reason. Was Luca's closest friend. He possessed many fine qualities, but Rollo finally noticed the tears welling in his Wonderful! I had a good feeling about you from the moment you opened my book. That charm is a very special. Keep hold of it for now. Its purpose will reveal itself soon. Rollo looked to the sides. Dear reader, forgive me. Remember that charm you found in the dandy? There are more of those special charms to discover throughout Beacon Pine. They've been known to reveal themselves to those who are willing. Some of them can be found in this. Just some dusty knickknack. Gran had already. She kept a warm. One of his father's old stuff. Luca had spent countless hours, not for years. Since Gran had and more covered it. Luca paused at his. He just what? Gran had commandeered some things. Luca tossed on his favorite old. Even though it was the first day of summer, Gran's moving in meant Luca was. Gran's bed with Luca didn't mind. It meant that he could read. The only a pair of dull scissors, a broken An array of each labeled with a Oh my! I am now certain that you'll recall I was a bit coy. Excuse me. You are about to encounter your first turn. There are certain times in this tale when everything hinges on a single step forth, dear. A sturdy old young Luke. She always a begin. The less grand new, the better for We were just gonna go chill for the day. But best lies are built on truth. Easy. Impressive. You've managed to navigate your first turning point without too much of a mess. That is the power of charm. A single word can change. I think it's time to introduce you. The Chronicle is a record of the decisions you can see the turning point, which has been revealed. At any time, you can use the Chronicle to go back and invoke different charms. Luckily for us, this is the one and only turning point where the charms won't dramatically alter fate. It's the perfect opportunity to We were just gonna go ponder for the day. This was Luca's chance to sell. Nailed it. We were just gonna go hide for the day. Traditionally, when one is trying, all's well. The road leading to Beacon Pine, a sort of natural. Chapter 2. Welcome to Beacon Pine. For many years, this valley had been a small... It wasn't until Sharper Valentine built his fertilizer company over the next 30 years until, in the 6 years since, William Kerr was the CEO of Perennial. He had become a fixture around town after the failing of the town was... Mayor Augustus Valentine. Flustered, Gus instinctively loosened his... Mr. Sinclair continued snoring and lifted a tactic he often used. He pulled a pen from the pocket of his sweater vest and began to... Pete stopped scribbling and glanced. Whenever Lucas, it reminded him of the... Luca opened the tackle box and picked the perfect... Luca gently baited a feather onto the... Good for skimming the surface. Luca gently... Good for skim... Luca tied a shoe... What fish could... Luca gently... Good for skim... Luca gently... Good for skimming. Luca tied... What fish could... The boys had... As long as they kept... They had an endless... After Luca's father had passed, Rollo became obsessed with them building their own Hank atomic star scraper. It was sometime... one certain night, Rollo thinks it's he always. Luca looked up at Rollo nearly. While it didn't turn the, it did at least boost the. Luca's winter coat with the cold. For a town. Luca could see the more. Miss Hatch could off to absorb it. Oh, right. This is the first time having a well. Where were we? Rolo froze as Roxy took a step. Luca knew he had one In the past, he found the best way to deal with an enraged Roxy was to be a little chill. Holden Wilder ran the local paper of The Beacon. A bit much. Dawn had dreams of becoming a big-time reporter. At night, she searched for the story. By day, she A promise Gran regretted. The phone booth, it didn't. Luca peeked up at the beehive. It appeared to be deserted. The Valentine Mansion loomed over every other building, both figurative. After the foul heart, the Valentines shut. The path led. The fence thrummed. Luca often asked him so that he could roll out. As sparks flew from the fence, 2 bulbs remained. One more to go. The fence is buzzing. Every kid in town knew the long abandoned. The warehouse once served as the inn. Now it stood only as the dormant building showed. There was only one way to find. The water it floats. The hose and it was active. Luca thought he heard faint sounds coming from the up. He pressed his ear against the sound of footsteps. The heavy steel door knocked Luca disoriented. He looked up to see it lunge toward him. Luca watched his finger. This is a story about change. It was far from the sort of change Luca imagined for himself. But change is the end? I probably should have warned you about this. There are many paths that are most will end in tragedy, but we will find the ending that the story. From here on out, a charm will have a check mark when it's been used to its full potential. Now, let's... In the the past, he found the best way to deal with an enraged Roxy was to be a little shit. Solomon Valen, current ward of Enfield, huffed as he brushed off his... Solomon trifled a gesture toward the approaching Eris Valen. As the glowing windows of the old warehouse came into view, Rollo began to bounce excitedly. The boy sat petrified under the weight. Rollo felt around at the large sack. He snapped off a tag from just within a small zipper opening in the bag. Rollo held the badge up to a faint shaft of light with... Lucas sat in the dark, tracking the sound of Rollo. 1, 2, 3. He pressed 15, 35, 36. Screw it, that's long enough. Luca carefully lifted. Nothing. No sign of Rollo. No sign of the man in the yellow. Time to haul ass. Luca clambered from the dumpster, stumbling. He was up like a shot and running. Beacon Pines flew by, blurred by the tears that he wouldn't remember getting home at all then. Throwing his front door open. Chapter 3: Finding a Friend. The next morning, it was quieter than usual at the breakfast table. Only the sound of silverware and chewing interrupted the... Gran's brow. She let out a long... Luca was desperate to check in until Gran returned. A faint electronic sound floated in. Luca glanced at the net. He wasn't sure what to think. A pit formed in... Luca's mouth felt... Luca could feel his heart beat. Luca tied a small fishing with a Toby looked up from the
We all know Beacon Pines is a great town. What you may not know is great towns grow from mighty roots. And that is why you cannot tell the story of Beacon Pines without telling the story of one Sharper Valentine. Young Sharper's keen intellect and strong moral fiber led to a grand vision. A vision of a community dedicated to a better tomorrow. In his own words, a better tomorrow is within our grasp, but it requires a singular mind to harness it. Lucky for us, he decided to grow that vision here, in Beacon Pine. And how does one grow a better tomorrow? With fertilizer, of course. Valentine's Fertilizer Company became the lifeblood of a town yearning for purpose. But then tragedy struck, a scientific experiment gone wrong. An accident which took Sharper away from us far too soon. To this day, we struggle to pick up the pieces. But one foul harvest isn't enough to stop the people of Beacon Pines. The spirit of Sharper Valentine lives on. It lives in the hearts of everyone with a dream for a better tomorrow. Together, we will follow his example and grow a bountiful future. Paid for by the Valentine family and the Valentine Fertilizer Company Remembrance Fund.
Kato volunteered at the library. He wasn't very social, making him a. If you were to, he'd escape into the. Kato was lost in his. Luca crooked his neck to see. He gestured to. Oh, the cobs, a salad. Sally C. Luca brushed off 30 recipes so easy you'll. A peek behind the curtain. The methods and rumination. One of the by. There were rarely simply a. Mycological. The bottom corner only one cellular bio. The entire most of which. Beck's family moved often, giving her little time to establish any she would tell you she preferred. Luca shifted his. Beck pulled a coin from her pocket. After the foul harvest, the Valentine, both figurative. Luca felt a chill. Her eyes were locked on the nearby grass was. Luca watched as Beck's eyes widened as flowers grew from the first small buds, which quickly blew. As quickly as they had grown, the flowers began to shrivel. Beck dropped the stick with a grunt of dismay. Iggy took a step towards Luca. Beck could see tears welling in some things about, but a bully from a. Beck took a deep breath and thought. Well, time to bust out the tickles. Beck lunged forward and began to tears began to form. Beck redoubled her efforts until Iggy's eyes darted around, a realization dawning on his face that he was... Iggy kicked at the puddle before making him. Beck shook the ooze out of her. Chapped the best polish. Luca paused for a moment, catching his... He'd only just met Beck, and hopefully he could make it up to her. Roxy and Fitz, it was clear they'd spent... Roxy's temper could often be dismissed as the impatient, but this was the most intense. Her eyes were wild and unfocused, looking in a torrent of rambled words and tears. Roxy, still exhausted and angry, softened briefly as her eyes hunted the ground. With a determined sigh, she looked up at Luca. Roxy drew herself up. Roxy tried to think of the safest place. Luca wiped his cheeks and gave a quick... Looking into the puddle, Roxy rubbed her arms toward... Mr. Nuncreed jumped with a start. Luca motioned to the phone. Mr. Nuncreed gently placed one of his substantial hands on Luca's shoulder. Luca peered up at Mr. Nuncreed. Kind. There was a deeper emotion. It was subtle, but Luca... There was a deep sigh. If Mr. Mr. Nuncreed raised an eye. Mr. Nuncreed's shoulders slumped. A deep sigh bellowed. Luca attempted to take a step back, but Nuncreed's hand clamped. With a firm shove, Nuncreed manhandled Luca into... The door latched shut with a mechanical... As Luca pounded the glass, the floor dropped from under his... The inside of the phone booth was now a loose capsule, plummeting at gravity's... Luca winced and pressed his hands to... As he braced for impact, the capsule... He felt a cold rush of air. Two large figures in hazmat. Luca heard the deep, resigned voice of Mr. Nuncreed. He knows too much. The end. Wait. This isn't the end. I know there's still much more. Somehow this went wrong. Okay, let's try some. Well, time to bust out the strange. Beck stared, the only sign of life being the twitch of an eye. At the sight of Iggy taunting Beck, something in Luca snapped. Iggy's smirk shifted to a look of Iggy's clothes were drenched in the Iggy's voice began to The person at this strange ooze, and was Rollo? Beck glanced. Rollo. A wave of relief washed over Luca, which was quickly replaced. Gran is going to... If he hurried, he might just make it... Chapter Our Harvest. Luca took a deep breath and gingerly opened the... The house was empty. Luca was by the pond, listening to small waves. His father sat in a fold without turning. Why don't you grab me? Sure thing, Dad. Luca hopped over to the tackle box and popped inside. Was a rolling. We're fishing with... Luca's father gave a... Well, you catch... Luca closed his eyes and plucked, holding it at arm's length. Interesting choice. With a practiced flick of the wrist, the water accepted it without the wrong. The pond began. Sometimes we gotta make pallid ice propagated. Luca scrambled back. Dad? Sorry, kiddo. The relentless ice. Dad, look out! His father casually. None of it's your fault. Dad, we have to go. Luca grabbed his father's shoulders, trying to... Please, you... The ice crackled as it's... That's the thing about fishing. His chest began to crisp. You toss your hook in, and you never... A shock of searing cold ran. The chair tipped backwards, and Luca tried to stop them. He watched the icy form of his father slam into the hard ground. Dad, I don't understand. The gentle rustle of leaves was the... Luca's eyes struggled to focus on... Faintly, he could hear Rollo amongst them. Rollo's voice was coming through more clearly now, but some words were still... The signal went. Luca held still, his pounding heartbeat marking. Rollo's voice began to fade. With that, Luca grabbed the walkie-talkie and sprinted to the... Luca heard a group of... He dashed behind the bushes to avoid... Mr. Tolliver paused. Mr. Tolliver took one long... The three shared a... The two boys... Luca wrapped some... Hey, you never... Luca placed a sink. Sometimes... Luca could only see a cloaked shape behind the rock. He strained to hear as a... Fear gripped Luca. Luca stared at the ground for... The figure shifted... Luca reached over empathetic. Iggy's tone jolted to deject. Luca slumped to the ground. Iggy slumped to his... Luca grabbed the walkie-talkie and headed... Luca and Iggy climbed up the back of the treehouse to its roof, where Rollo had constructed his the mission control defense cannon. From behind the crowd of clipboards, William Kerr strode forward. Kerr's smile. Luca's grip tightened on the MC. Luca's mind raced. He wiped his cheeks with a... Luca drew. He swung the mission control defense cannon around, and Luca summoned his most Kerr turned his back with a nonchalant wave of the hand. He made as the clipboards began to the end. That escalated quickly. Maybe let's put a pin in this for now. This is a story about struggle. Luca could hear a machine humming. He felt around wildly. His hands found. He yanked it free, lifting the Let me. Luca swung the tile as hard. He heard the crack of glass as with a muffled yelp. Luca was free and scrambled. He never looked back once. Chapter 3. Everything's fine. The next morning, it was quieter. Only the sound of Luca checked the soul. Eris had a way of making Mr. Wilder had. It was because she had. Mr. Wilder averted his gaze and began. She leaned forward. Luca shifted the basket. Mrs. Fratelli lifted the cloth. She carefully lifted. Huddled at his counter, Hiram Tolliver was more accurately with a yelp. He leaned. He leaned in. Mr. Tolliver leaned back, speaking. He reached forward and he leaned. Kato motioned to the book in front of him. Nuncreed eyed Luca for a moment. Nuncreed snatched the basket from Luca. Beck locked eyes with the look on her face was equal. Beck gave Luca a quick nudge. Jeff dug through his pockets. Beck took a long breath, then gave a firm nod. Chapter Dinner with the Moodwills. Ilona Moodwill was worried about change. A gardener at heart, she understood the necessity, but there was a difference between the controlled world of her plants. Almost done. Nellie was a blur of activity, digging through boxes. Dinner went by without much conversation as she watched Beck and Luca finish up their pizza. The thing she cared about, Nellie finally had the job. Beck was beginning to... Ilona's task, she could do that. Luca's eyes were fixed to his plate, pushing a chunk of pineapple around with his finger. Nellie was the one who eventually broke the silence. Ilona nervously gestured toward the boxes. Luca wiped his face with his sleeve. Beck gave Luca a swift... Luca glanced over to Beck. She Beck slammed her fist into the... perhaps harder than she... Luca glanced outside to gauge... The sky was darker than he... Luca wiped his mouth one last time with his napkin and started to... Surprised, Luca turned around. But Beck seemed cool, probably. Luca began to respond. Luca surveyed the roiling. At that moment, the... Luca bent down, judging by the oak. He flipped open the attached. Luca flicked at one of the... Luca squinted into the eye hole of the microscope. Luca adjusted the slide with his... Luca wiped his hand. Beck looked down. Beck took a moment to watch the rivulets of water. Luca took a deep... Luca let out a feral scream. Her voice dropped. Beck brushed off her shirt and straightened up. As abruptly as it began. Luca a... Chapter friendly. The air was heavy, the smell of wet things. Despite his dreary, he'd never shared, not even Rollo. But it's not like that. Adding Beck to the group would help balance things out. This is what Luca told himself as he... Jeff's hardware closed down about a year ago. The effects of the foul harvest. When there are no crops in the field, tractors don't need... Luca wrapped some fish. Luca had only ever heard him speak in this stiff yet gentle, and it always meant Rollo scoffed. Luca stumbled on his words. Luca became instinctively. Both boys were now Rollo's tone changed to a calm. The words hung in the Rollo's stomach dropped, but it was too. Luca dug through his old stuff. Gran cooed gently. Luca he waited to hear the sound of the front door. Luca dozed off. Luca still couldn't bring him. Besides, if he ran into Rollo, he'd have to act. The adventure. Luca carefully. Rollo had received it for a special Rollo chair. Luca wasn't sure if it was because Rollo didn't trust him or just wanted an excuse, whatever the reason. But it had stayed right there. Now, at the foot of his bed, Luca lost. He'd read it all before. He was well into issue number 5 when he heard. Without realizing it, Luca had pouted. He once again felt the weight of it all, and Luca stood in a. He looked up at his father's. Walt was working a straw at the bottom of a fountain glass. Dad, taking a final loud gurgling sip, he jangled the straw playfully, then lifted the empty the sword. Luca's eyes followed in an instant. He was across from him. The figure's voice was a scratchy, "Well, if it isn't the man, make yourself." Luca held his shivering hands over the flame. "It doesn't work." Their yellow-gloved hand pointed to the base of the flame. "It's a cold." Luca peered at the base of the fire. It wasn't wood that was burning. Tiny buildings, freezing and crumbling as they were consumed. Luca could see small shadow people. Luca leapt to his feet. "We've got to help them." The figure gave a dismissive wave of their, "Why waste energy?" Help. The figure bent down to examine them. "They only care about not let." Luca's voice was a trembling, "Us?" The figure slowly stood up with a jolt and a twist. A cloud of torpid mist is Luca's own face, older. The sensation was as if he'd caught his own reflection by surprise. The doppelganger smiled. "I tried to help one." He gestured towards his, "and all it got me was this." Luca staggered back. "You?" Luca felt a hand catch his shoulder. His father was there again, beside him. "Every choice. This is the end of one." Luca watched his older self shake its head ruefully. "Welp, Dad." If you wanted him, Luca watched in shock as the figure took in a flash of cold light. "What?" Luca felt a reassuring squeeze. "Just remember. Why?" Luca woke up to see. Luca rubbed his eye. The kind, concerned face. Gran silenced Luca with a gentle pat. Luca gave a. Luca took a deep breath. Chopped through thick and thin. Despite Luca's bitterness, Gran was right. A big fight, whether in the end, if one is not careful. Luca emerged from seclusion, taking in, but the events of the day weren't on his mind. He had to find Roland. Roxy rolled her eyes. Luca looked down and kicked. Mr. Kerr pointed. Luca rapped. Hey. Jeff then gave. For a moment, the two now shared that. Sorry, I'll. Griffin looked away. Kato's eyes. Kato straightened up and cleared his throat. Kato stared at Luca. Luca grabbed the. Luca grabbed. Luca grabbed. Luca grabbed. Luca grabbed Natural Photography, Volume 5 from. Luca grabbed. Luca grabbed. Luca grabbed the adventure. Kato removed his. As he slid the book under the purple, The Adventures of Hank. Luca clicked. Kato began flipping through the pages, stopping when he hit a glow. He continued flipping. Reaching the end of the book, Kato. Before Luca could finish his sentence, Griffin handed... Luca shrugged, taking a sizable bite out of... Luca tongued at his cheeks. He reached into his mouth and pulled out... He shook off the bits of corn dog. Luca finished off the remainder of the... Lumi waved his hands around... Rollo sheepishly handed Luca... Luca threw himself at Rollo, hugging him as tightly as he could. Rollo handed Luca an unopened letter. Luca, some things are going to happen that might be difficult for you, if I am honest. I hardly understand, but whatever happens, I need you to know, none of this is fair to you. You have already lost, as we both have. I wish there was a simpler way forward. God knows I've tried everything I've done. I hope someday you can accept that. Love, Gran. Luca folded the paper into his pocket and headed up the ladder. Luca was was at a loss, but that was fine. Words aren't always necessary. Sadly, this was untrue. A distant rumble shook the treehouse. It was not fireworks. It was something the boys couldn't possibly comprehend, something as old and cruel. A shockwave of cold tore through the room. A bitter, unfathomable chill. Before they could react, two boys reunited. And so, our story in a silent treehouse turned statuary. In a town brought love for the rest of time. The end. No, that can't be the ending. I won't accept it, and I hope you won't either. There are more endings, more possibilities. I can feel it. We are just going to have to sort through them all. Luca drew himself up and decided. He squinted down the barrel of the mission control defense cannon, aiming it through an opening. He looked up with surprise. Luca and Iggy winced as they sprinted. The branches clawed at them, reluctant after what felt like a marathon. That was all he was able to say before the boys tumbled down a steep decline and crashed with a wheezing thud. In fact, Chapter 5. Sign. They stood silently. The sky was like with each breath a plume. Let's keep moving. Luca pulled Iggy to his feet as they gazed across. A disc of two faint seams. Luca had almost forgotten the walk. Luca looked at with a resigned sigh. Luca winced, shoving the walkie-talkie. The boys stared. The fencing glistened, each chain link encapsulated with a translucent. Looking down at the frozen stream, Luca could faintly see a school of minnows encased in. The crunching of footsteps, he looked back to see Iggy's face twisted with. Luca peered upward. He let out a look faintly. Seeing Iggy in such a pathetic state gave Luca a sense of. Luca allowed himself to. The boys huddled together for, if not for exhaustion, their minds would be racing. As it was, all they had. Iggy motioned sarcastically to his. Iggy shrugged. Iggy now wept. He wiped his nose with a sleeve. Luca gave a warm chuckle. Iggy cleared his throat. Iggy arched into. Luca's eyelids began to slow. That's all Luca could whisper before Iggy snuggled in. The house smelled of warm bread. Luca was playing with toy blocks on. He looked up to see his parents. His mother held his father's head in her. A voice behind Luca spoke. Then Luca turned to see the doppelganger from his dreams, still clad in a. Aww. Look at this perfectly cozy scene. You know, it wasn't. The figure picked up a toy block. It's amazing the facades that. Not that I blame. You don't remember, do you? Luca snatched the block from the figure's yellow glove. The doppelganger pointed to the cap. The last day we saw him, the day he chose. Luca turned to look. That's not true. The doppelganger waved his. Everything is true. Well, let me show you. The world flickered. Luca was sitting next to it. The doppelganger limped. He grabbed Luca's hand and guided. Luca heard muffled. It was his parents. Do you remember what we did? Luca gave a slow nod. He could see the outline. Damn it, Walt. We can't afford to get involved. She was scared. His father stepped forward. There's a sickness in this town, and we both. I swore I won't turn my back. Luca's mother grabbed Walt. She was. Walt calmly. What's right is right. I could never live with Eleanor. Raised her voice. Spare me your bull. What about ours? Luca flinched. Walt turned with a. Luca? He said with tears in his eyes. Mom? Walt dropped to a knee to meet. Nothing, Buckaroo. Your mom and I just. Luca placed the. It sounded like you. Walt gently. Listen to me, Luca. I have some. I'll be back in time to. Luca hugged his father. Promise? Walt stood up and walked to the. I prom. With a wink and a grin. He put. A figure approached. It stood above them, slowly raising one hand above Iggy. It snapped from a deep slumber. Whether it was the calming presence or the recognition that Iggy felt his clenched fist. Luca looked up, gradually. The figure exhaled a cloud of. When it came to complete strangers, Iggy had trouble cobbling together. Iggy huffed with gratification. Nat began to turn away. Iggy turned sharply and began. Realizing he'd worn their patience thin, Nat relented. Luca and Iggy turned around with hope in their eyes. Nat took a deep breath in. Nat exhaled slowly, then snapped his feet. For a brief moment, Luca and Iggy let themselves believe that some great magic until they opened their eyes and found themselves cold and... Nat narrowed his eyes, furrowed his... Luca began to laugh uncomfortably. He looked down at his feet. His eyes started back and forth in contemplation with a sudden pain. He sprinted off into the... As Iggy turned to follow, Nat... The source. Nat expressed his sympathy with a shrug and sauntered off. He'd given Luca and Iggy what they need. As Luca sprinted across the snow, the events of the past... Rollo said he was underground. Mr. Kerr tried to cover it up with... The clipboards were hell-bent on It all seemed to point to Perennial. But right now, there was one thing. Luca stopped. The tree was gone. Uprooted and moved, leaving a rug. He dropped to his knees and dug wide. His numb hands hit something hard. Whisper escaped. There was no reply, just snow. Iggy finally noticed the tears welling in Luca's eyes and the snow-covered grave. Suddenly, they heard the crunch of approaching footsteps. He bent down to scoop up a snowball and lobbed it. Luca stuttered through heat. Iggy gave Luca a solid smack on the back of... wiped his eyes. Iggy flashed a mischief. Iggy and Luca shared a Iggy darted behind a large pine and began digging. He emerged holding a shoebox with a crude skull painted on its lid. Luca rolled his eyes. Iggy stifled a Iggy triumphantly raised. Luca and Iggy inched up to the edge of Arctic air breathed out of the cavern. Mr. Kerr gazed down the abyss and Kerr scratched the back of his head. His face contorted into a saccharine. Kerr snapped his finger. Iggy turned to Luca with a slide. Iggy waved the box into the air, Iggy plucked a single bottle rocket from the box and held it up with After a long pause, Mr. Kerr Mr. Kerr sighed into the... With a nonchalant flick... With a growl, Kerr leapt at Iggy. Iggy tried to twist away, but in this, Luca dove forward, braced. His grip was made precarious. He could see Kerr further down, clinging to Iggy. Mr. Kerr gasped. With a wild look in his eye, Mr. Kerr began to hum up. Luca's hand began to cramp. Luca felt Iggy. Every muscle in Luca's body. Luca felt his hand slipping. Calm settled. Iggy's voice was cold. Luca had no choice but to refuse Iggy's request. He tightened his grip and reached for the a wild delight crept. That's a good lad. Iggy begged Luca with his eye. We need... It wasn't long before... Mr. Kerr sighed with relieved frustration. A clipboard due to... Ah, that's better. Mr. Van, I'll put in a good word for you with the founder. A swarm of hands overpowered Luca. He saw before a cloth bag was pulled over his head was the end. I think... Luca had no choice but to accept Iggy's request. Luca watched a tear as his fingers slowed. The two silhouettes were swallowed by darkness. We have some idea what that would look like. A fierce twinkle flashed in Nat's eyes. With a chuckle, Nat turned and walked dumbfounded. Luca followed behind him, every step taking him further away. To be continued. Beacon Pines, pines harder. Revenge served second... Wait, that's it? This ends with a crummy cliffhanger? I was even starting to... No way. I refuse to be associated with some... Let's go back and find something more definitive. Luca began to respond, but the sky answered for him as the clouds above began to break, revealing patches of star. Luca stopped himself mid-sentence. Luca saw Beck skulking by the gate. Beck grabbed the wrought iron bar. Beck's voice was in a... The mysterious figure retracted their mask. Hair pushed. A chill ran down Luca's spine. His vision blurred. Beck stifled a sharp... under the face mask. Gran gave Eris a curt nod. What big ears? Lucas sat shivering in the bush after checking to make sure that... The clipboard finished writing with a scratchy flourish and looked up. Mr. Nuncreed, arms crossed over his paunch. He snatched the pad and scribbled his name so hard. The clipboards looked at each other for a moment, then broken. William Kerr and Gus Valentine proudly surveyed the half-cover. The mayor gave a half. Kerr locked. With a glimmer in his eye, Kurt... Luca gently good for. Luca tied up. If all. Rollo waggled his head with. Luca sucked in a long breath. Rollo let out a low. Rollo and Luca. Luca gazed out the window. Chap's secret lair. Summer forged ahead. Luca walked. Reaching home, he slipped quietly. Luca and Beck rolled their eyes as Rollo flung open. He coughed as a of realization crept. All three kids. Before he could finish, Lucas scrambled up. The three crowded around the hut. With the glass doors opened, a perfect porcelain. Their eyes searched for any, but they only. As Beck pulled up, the entire hutch began to rustle and slide. Rollo cat. He smacked his lips. Rollo plunged his hand in the jar, fishing. Rollo offered the slimy note to Luca. Luca jostled each cabinet drawer in turn. He fingered through the filing cabinet, pausing at a bulging folder labeled for a long moment. Luca nodded and caressed the label. Rollo swiped the folder from the drawer and began leafing through the page. He whistled to him. He stopped at a page. Rollo looked up with. Rollo's finger traced across the page. Rollo scanned through several. Luca, staring blankly at. Rollo rustled the folder. Luca slammed the drawer shut. A spider web enters. They crowded around a worn-down. Rollo carefully traced the path with his finger. He jabbed down at the. Beck flicked off the light. Overhead, creaking floorboards. The kids looked up, the tilt of their necks. Then suddenly, without realizing, they'd been holding their breath. A muffled man. A final few footsteps reached the edge. The three kids shuffled to as he began to thump, 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 thump. At the bottom step, the man. Rollo shifted. Luca gave him an intense, chastising look and whispered. It was too late. Rollo was all. He screamed with all his. From the dark corner, they saw. Luca scrambled, pressing his as Beck. Chapters: The Interrogation of Hiram. Still unconscious, Mr. Tolliver, his hands were bound with rope. His feet, the kids huddled in a circle. One thing was certain. They needed to know what he was doing. After some deliberation, they'd run the classic good cop, chill cop interrogation. Luca walked. Mr. Tolliver shook his head. He looked over to find Rollo and Beck emerged from hiding to give it. Luca glanced over to Rollo and Beck. Mr. Tolliver. Luca gestured to the. Luca looked again to. This time they shrugged. Luca began to slow. Mr. Tolliver gently rubbed his. He edged imperceptibly. Before the kids had even noticed his movement, He punctuated his final words by flicking the switch. Beck darted to the wall and turned back on. It was too. Rollo confirmed what they. Mr. Tolliver's. They looked bewildered. They heard the staccato thump of quick steps. The kids looked down. This isn't how it. For some reason, Luca opened his mouth. Only a hollow end. Well, back to the drawing board. Luca had no choice but to refuse Iggy's request. He tightened his. Oh, what? That's Iggy. It wasn't long before they were once again surrounded. I'll put in a swan. They'd run the classic good cop, hard cop interrogation. Rollo brandished a steely gaze. I've got this. Rollo swaggered past the chair which propped up the slumping Hiram Tolliver. Without even looking at his cap, Mr. Tolliver remained motionless. Rollo spun around. He'd clearly expected to rouse Mr. Tolliver. Beck and Luca gave Rollo slam. He grabbed the table lamp and. Mr. Tolliver groaned. He recoiled. The chair wobbled. Mr. Tolliver could only make out rough with a gruff tone. The doubtful expression. Rollo hitting his stride. He slammed the table again. Mr. Tolliver's voice. He was nearly. Mr. Tolliver was in a daze. Now he shook his head, feeling more and more. His voice faded to. With that, Mr. Tolliver passed out cold. Rollo swung around with a. Chapter 6 feet under, 3 town. The kids spent the rest of the afternoon combing through. Luca tried to shake the thought of Gran's basement. Explosives, messages hidden in jam, dossiers on various town figures, and a cork. Gran was the only. But the old map with the symbol of. As the sun began to set, the kid. Rollo shut his book within his circle. Rollo muttered under. Beck slammed her finger down on the open. Something tickled the back of Lucas. The question hung. Beck rubbed her eye. Luca's heart was if he was lucky. Gran or whoever. And of course, there was Mr. Tolliver tied up, and dealing with him would be the first. Luca shook out his arm. He held perfectly still, temper. She was asleep. His only hope was that she hadn't found Mr. Mr. Tolliver was nowhere to be. Or maybe Gran knew everything. Lucas hungry, not realizing it, he'd gone the entire. Luca rushed over to the pile of jam jars, unscrewed one, and shoveled a handful. He flipped the lid to read the label. As Luca climbed the final stair, the emotion. With each consecutive step, his stride began. He tried to grab for the railing to steady him. Something was wrong. Luca groaned. His limbs might as well have been. Through numb lips, he mumbled. Chapter a speech to Luca awoke to find himself. He moaned into his pillow. Or rather, why was she trying to drug? Shaking the questions from his woozy head, Lucas. Augustus Valentine nervously wiped. Gus cleared his throat and awkwardly loosened his tie. William Kerr bounded on the stage with the... He gave Gus a hearty slap on the back and... Mr. Kerr pulled... Mr. Kerr took a moment. He wiped away... He thumped... Mr. Kerr, the crowd... Mr. Kerr thought... His voice began to build. The crowd began to look around. Mr. Kerr quickly flicked through his note cards. He raised his hands up to the heavens. At that moment, a merciless wall of for a man like William Kerr, on a stage, with an entire town froze. There's that ice again! Whenever I think we're getting close, maybe we should just quit? No, we got a little closer this time. Please. They'd run the classic good cop. Luca and Rollo ducked behind a barrel. With a few crisp snaps. Mr. Tolliver looked down and shifted. Beck caught herself before she'd already pissed was gonna. Mr. Tolliver ripped. Beck quickly removed the... Mr. Tolliver rubbed the growing knot on... Beck twirled her hand, as if to prompt Mr. Beck shook her head and clicked her tongue. Mr. Tolliver let out an amused huff in agreement. Beck was on a roll now, playing... Heading for the stairs, Mr. Tolliver hesitated and turned to Beck. She grinned and gave him a peppy with a shrug. He continued up the stairs. Beck blinked slowly. She turned to the table and began tearing. Beck marked each scrap of paper. Luca and Beck looked at Rollo with amazement. Luca gently for skin. Gus looked around nervously. Eris's cry Solomon stood proudly at the end, holding a brown bag. Solomon shoveled a surprising amount of licorice into his... Beck cupped her hands on the glass. Beck flung open the door. Luca cracked his knuckles and entered the letters into the key. The inside of the phone booth dropped loose without even the space to panic. Suddenly, the chaos... It was unclear with... The air was stagnant. Rollo's hands... Joseph waited for a moment and... He gestured toward the strange tube. Nuncreed let out a groan. He shook his head. Nuncreed took a menacing step toward. Luca began to laugh. The color drained from Nuncreed grabbed Luca by the shoulders, his eyes. A jolt of realization struck Mr. Nuncreed. Chapter 8. The cold, Beck left dimness eclipsed around her only points of. She heard the tinny, distant echoes of Rollo's glee once she stopped fighting against it. Then, all of a sudden, a burst of wintry. As they rounded the corner to the frozen town square, they spotted Mr. Nuncreed, and he held his arms out gingerly. Upon closing the distance, Gran stood confident nearby. She held a lit torch. Mr. Nuncreed turned back toward the kids. Rollo and Beck held steady. Luca approached close. Mr. Nuncreed spun back toward Gran. Mr. Nuncreed winced with his voice hard. They both now yelled, making their peace with the wind howled. They menaced at each other, both catching their breath. The moment balanced on. Amid a blur of emotion, the wind calmed. And it was all falling to his knees, the tears. Gran stared at Luca for a moment. She stiffened up, ignoring his. She smiled and exhaled the torch at. Before. Gran only had her unflinching. There was no contest. Her warmth, that is where, and so in a town, the end. Well, on the now. And after the death of his father, Luca, each night, it was the only thing, that melody shivering in the... Gran lowered the torch as recognition slowly set the incomparable. She let the torch. A few steps toward Luca was all. Through a flood of. Luca lifted his head the last time he heard that. Luca blinked. He could just. He peered across the snowscape. Something about her, only smaller. Luca sprinted. They held. Eleanor looked down at Luca, tightening her embrace. Joseph slumped into the cold. For the first, Luca gazed down at Nuncreed with pity. Joseph stared into the snow as if. The devil, you 7 months. Eleanor Van Horn crept down. She stopped in front of the large steel. No turning back. She raised it. The stolen keycard worked as promised, and the door bust open with. She was immediately hit with this. It was some sort of. In one corner was a. She rushed to. They were experiment reports on something called. There were dozens of them. Every one. Eleanor heard the sharp echo. She was out of time. Her eyes scanned the. Muttering a curse under her breath. Mr. Kerr addressed the crowd with a sarcastic. Whispers filtered through the crowd. Torment dragged on Joseph. He paused for a moment, plucking a piece of fuzz from his sweater and just. Kerr gave a bow of gasps rippled through the crowd. Solomon pulled a glass vial from his pocket. In one smooth motion, a triumphant smile grew. His body and face began to contort and a hushed. This is a Sharper examined his new. Sharper choked out frustrated grumbles. William Kerr gave a subtle nod to the clip. A helpless quiet settled. Sharper addressed the crowd with he'd planned this moment for so long that now, at the deed's fruition, Mr. Kerr flourished a preposterously elaborate Sharper coughed up one final laugh and so Sharper, the fertilizer factory, soon sales rose steadily. Beacon Pines became a secretive town that, for the right price, gifts that became the end. This is wrong, but you can feel it. We can't let Sharper win. He might just. Let's see. Like a trap ready. Luca felt the weight of something wasn't right. He didn't know why. Luca twisted. The two scurried off. Luca gently first. He aired a long. Luca felt it. He conceded. Once again, Luca found. This time, he took a sing. The world flicked. He found himself standing at the source. He plopped down. Soon enough, Luca stood up. He plucked a keepsake. The voice of his father. You made me pray. Luca turned to face. Dad. A warm a place where Luca found himself staring. Wait. For what? Another voice spoke out. That's without knowing why. Is Luca's father. Of course. I'm as real. Luca turned to. And you? The doppelganger choked. I'm as real as the part of you does. Through his tears, his father pulled time to go. Luca was a commanding voice. Just as Lucas. Chapter Dangers. Luca stumbled back, keeping his eye as his hand. A large. The large figure caught. Luca's jaw. He peered more. Something only big change. Rollo proudly presented his. Luca moved to the. His hands shot. Rollo's shadow. With a yelp, Rollo. She shot a. Beck's eyes. Ilona tried to put. She sighed. She. gave Rollo a quick elbow. Beck flicked. Rollo started. Chapped the hut. They spent the night. It would be not to mention by the time the sun began. This could just the final day. They'd need to pull even enlist. Luckily, Luca, Beck, and they hadn't. The festival was to begin. He waved vaguely. Beck snorted. They each looked at each. Jeff wheezed. The joy in Jeff's looking into the sullen eyes of his wood. Luca wasn't. He shouted. Jeff's brow. Sensing Jeff's one good stomp of the foot was all Jeff needed. Luca offered out with a firm and Iggy raised. Iggy gave a reluctant. Luca knew he tried. Iggy gave a reluctant. Iggy gave a... Iggy considered. Iggy gave a reluctant. Iggy considered the point. Iggy gave a reluctant. Iggy considered. A wild-eyed Iggy glimpsed. With a quick nod, Iggy gazed up at Tish. A single tear ran down. chap into a good height and thorough. So far, Jeff, Beck radioed Luca that night with a sim and Rolo he stowed away in mission Rolo being the outfit provider. Rolo took a few He had to think quick. Rolo sighed. With a stroke of his mustache. He stammered. Rolo interrupted. Rolo panicked. The distraction was enough for Rolo to... The clipboard fumbled around in a... Solomon stopped. A veneer? His words. Solomon's. Luca Luca tried the hand. Solomon leaned forward. Luca smiled. She mimed a quick hat tip and the light on Luca switched off. On the computer screen, a green cursor. Luca pecked out. The screen blinked. Solomon's. Luca quickly. Once again, in that moment of... He quickly skimmed the screen. Mr. Kerr approached. With self-satisfaction, he... Nellie leaned over to Nellie sighed. Solomon muttered. Solomon once again. Luca tugged on me. Luca with a subtle. They heard the Her eyes searched Solomon with a Solomon Solomon before he could finish. Rollo casually tossed the vial. Luca jiggled the vial bomb. She held it tightly behind. Solomon sighed. He pursed his a deep She looked with a dispirited Beck slowly. With Solomon pocketed the vial. The blood drained from Solomon shook his head with gratitude. A muffled applause. The color dropped. Luca. A sudden explosion sound. Chap comeuppance, ears still ringing through the dust. She'd had to bed. How many nights had she spent visualizing how, and now traded for the, with Fratelli and Tolliver at her side, she stepped through. It was a strange feeling. The last time she'd stalked, they quickly, something worth she leapt forward. If her last chance. They made their way out from deep. Solomon pulled. In one smooth motion, he downed its contents. A triumphant smile. With him, remember when I had the... I might have tweaked his wonder potion with a little junk. His As the last of what was once Sharper Valentine wafted into the air, his end would be a new a new chance. Well, I'd be lying if that feels. I might have tweaked his wonder potion with a little malice. His body and the crowd gazed. The quiet. He was never watching the silhouette of first. Through his tears, he was vaguely aware. That perhaps I'm only writing. I might have tweaked his wonder potion with a little change. His body. Eris awkwardly. She looked back with a shake of her head. Beacon Pines' coldest folks shared the new school year. After everything, the chill of winter, they kindled a hope in spring. And as the dawn, his mind at peace, knowing he is here for a reason. When perennial harvest collapsed, but some stuck. Eris did her best. Closing her eyes. Mr. With perennial harvest. Well, I think at the end. Honestly, I'd begun, but then you came. I don't know exactly how to thank you. It's hard to explain how much this means to. It's funny now that our time together is finally ending. It's just.